Don't get scared. This is big print. So, first of all, I have to get off the script for the simple reason that this is not a Yeshiva University affair. It's my bar mitzvah. So, sorry, you have to excuse me for that, but I was bar mitzvah right after the war, and I remember that I did have cake, and I had some brofen, but that's about it. So now, it is my bar mitzvah. So I appreciate it, and I'm sorry about the lies. In addition to that, you cannot trust rabbis. How do I know? I made a deal with them. If you talk less about me, you get more money. They didn't keep their word. They did not keep their word. Okay, and I'm not a comedian, so I'm going to stop when I'm ahead. First, I would like to thank Hashem for all the blessings He has granted us in the family and brought us to this day. First, I would like to acknowledge President Dr. Rabbi Ari Berman for joining us tonight and for all you have done to make the Fish Center a reality. Also, I'd like to thank Provost Selma Botman, she couldn't be here today with us, YU's Chief Academic Officer, for her leadership. Dr. Shai Pelnik is to be appreciated because he's the founding director of the Fish Center, who has done a remarkable job bringing us to this moment. And Rabbi J.J. Sechter for traveling from New York to LA and be our master of ceremony. I don't know if you know, but my father was liberated in Buchenwald by your father. Yes. We never talked about it, but that's true. I'd also like to thank all of those who worked so hard for this dinner. Michal Kleiman, Ellen Funkenstein from the YU Office of Institutional Advancement, the Fish Center staff, and of course, my children and their unbelievable spouses. David and his wife Nechama, Jeffrey and wife Aliza, and Monique and of course, and her husband Robert. This was certainly a team effort, putting together this grand production in such a short time. Also, I'd like to take this opportunity to honor my late wife, Jenny Alea Shalom. It was love at first sight. We got married in 1966, and we're married for 55 years. As many of you ladies know, she introduced the American Simcha dancing by ladies for Jewish celebrations, especially weddings. And her herself was a very good dancer and a good teacher. She was beautiful, educated, a good pianist, a student of Juilliard, and just a smart and classy lady. She was the best mother to her 3 kids, David, Jeffrey, and Monique, and was always supportive of all my endeavors. One of our biggest challenges was to make sure having a balanced Hebrew and secular studies for our children while they have to go to Orthodox schools. It's still a challenge. People want to know why I'm passionate about education, especially now about Holocaust education. It is because of Jenny's background. My parents were not able to provide us the best education due to the circumstances during the war. Their priority was keeping the family together and worrying about our survival. Many of you in this room, of course, knew Jenny personally. I'm sure you agree she was the best hostess one can imagine. Nothing was good enough for our guests. Our house was open to all the time to anybody and everybody, regardless of age, status, especially classmates of our 3 wonderful kids. When I came home before Shabbos on Friday, I never knew how many people were going to join us at the Shabbos table. We always enjoyed our guests we had. I miss her, and I know all of you that knew misses her too. Also, at this moment, I would like to thank my unbelievable daughter, Monique, for putting this dinner together. I know she doesn't like to be complimented in public, but she deserves our thanks. And now, to the more serious part of the speech. Some of these, I should never let the rabbis talk first because they usually say half of the things I was going to say. And I learned this a long time ago. I'm usually the first one speaking because they're bigger Talmud Chacham than I. So I just don't want to be outplayed, but I didn't do it this time. So if I repeat myself, you have to excuse me. B'shut Rabbi Dr. Berman and all distinguished rabbis with us, ladies and gentlemen. You can all imagine, and you know, that I'm not a scholar, even though I do talk analogies, and I'm sorry, and I apologize. My connection to this Holocaust is not professional, but rather very personal, intimate, and direct. I'm a Holocaust survivor, but I'm also a son of survivors. I was liberated in Bergen-Belsen when I was 10 years old. I grew up in a small town of Bardejov in Slovakia. I knew most of the victims in Bardejov. We, Jewish people, lost a whole generation. Many of the victims' last words were, "Please do not forget us." This is my first obligation, never to forget. My whole life, I felt that I have an obligation to them and to the 6 million murdered by the Nazis. But I also have another obligation to my family, to you, to Jewish people, and to humanity, and the word is never again. to make sure that none of you ever have to experience or see what I have seen. These two obligations may seem very simple to fulfill, but in reality, they are not. I grew up with those for whom the memories from the Holocaust were etched on their mind, their heart, and sometimes on their arms. What I realized over the years is that the number one memory of any memory, but especially of such a unique catastrophic event in history, is time. That's the enemy of memory. Our ancestors, the rabbis, understood this very well. Already 2,000 years ago, they therefore commanded us to remember the destruction of two temples and to share They commanded us to remember the destruction of the two temples and to share the story of our bondage in Egypt at the Passover Seder. They also commanded us, Zachor, to remember our enemies. In Judaism, remembered is regarded as sacred, difficult task. Something we should do repetitiously every day, week, month, and year. I realize that to find time to make sure that the next generation remember the Holocaust the same way I do may not be possible. That is because, that they have the knowledge and the deep, well-rounded understanding of this unique, unexperienced event in Jewish and modern history. It's this commitment to memory that led me to invest time, energy, resources, starting in 2005, 18 years ago. First was the part of preservation of my hometown's Jewish heritage. Then, in June 2019, 4 years ago, in founding the Fish Center for Holocaust and Genocide Studies at Yeshiva University. I may not have all the solutions or the perfect solution how the Holocaust memory can be preserved. But I decide to do what I can to make investment in education. This investment is my debt to my parents. Out of my father's family, he's the only one who came back, from his father, grandfathers, Talmud Chachumim, and so on. The only one that went back. Nobody came back. There happens to be, in this audience, is a gentleman, the only one family that I have from my father's side. From my mother's side, thanks God, different story. And I found, and I'm going off the script, my father's was a big Talmud Chacham of the Breuer Yeshiva against my grandfather's advice. And I found him many times crying in his breakfast room. It was an isolated breakfast room on Mansfield, and many times I found him crying. So he was the only one of the survivors. To the survivors is the important thing, to the 6 million among them were 1.5 million Jewish children who are not as lucky as I was. My survivor, after all, was nothing but a pure miracle. Like all the survivors, I never forget my debt, my obligation to being the mouthpiece of both the survivors and the victims of the Holocaust. When I look back to the journey with the Fish Center that I began, and my purpose of the whole thing was that in the beginning of June 29th, I could not think of a better investment and cannot stop thinking all you have come here to honor Yeshiva University and the idea of education about the Holocaust. I appreciate every one of you. I thank you for the support and all the efforts that you do and you will do for the remembrance, never again, and never forget us. Thank you very much.